Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
According to my calendar, we still have 2 more minutes before 2 o'clock. Good afternoon, Ms. McBride. I don't know if it's rainy where you all are, but we just got a brief reprieve from a big downpour over here.
No, on the opposite end of the county, we just had scattered sprinkles throughout the morning.
We did not get sprinkles. Well, that's not true. We had sprinkles until it turned into a downpour. So there was a small window of sprinkles. My walk this morning was abbreviated.
Yeah, we did get dumped on Sunday afternoon while I was driving back home from North Carolina.
Well, I'm glad you made it home safely.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. McBride. Well, it is 2 o'clock, and so I will call the Evaluation and Oversight Committee to order. I thought I saw Miss Black or Miss Only. I'm not sure which of you will be helping us today, but can you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. It's Miss Only. Malinowski.
Here.
McBride.
Here.
Mackey.
Here.
English. Newton.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And the next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. And before I entertain a motion on that, Miss Only, I'll just note that the top of this agenda above the date says the Development and Services Committee as opposed to the Evaluation and Oversight Committee, which caused me a minute of confusion. So if we can do whatever we do to update that, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So that brings us to item 2.
And they chop pictures off of something else, and we don't have the correct people on the back. Not that that makes any difference, but.
Well, I wasn't upset to not see my picture there, Mr. Malinowski, so that's probably why I didn't mention it, but you are correct. And Miss Only, I'll just make a note that Miss English has joined us as well for our meeting. Welcome, Miss English. We are on item number 2, approval of minutes, and I will entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion that has been properly seconded to approve the minutes. Miss Only, will you call the roll?
Malinowski.
Yes.
McBride.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3, adoption of the agenda. And I do have a few suggestions for your consideration. The first request for consideration is if we can move item 4C, update on county attorney search, to the first item. We have with us Randy Frank, our consultant, who is helping us with that search, and she is going to have to leave us before too long for another meeting. So if it would please council and we could make that item first, we will probably get a better update than if we don't do it that way. And then the second request for a change is the item that is currently listed as 4B, but would become 4C if you accept the previous recommendation, says evaluation process for clerk to council, but I would recommend that we change that to clerk to council search. Does anyone have any other suggestions for our agenda today?
Madam Chair, I move for
Ms. McBride?
approval. I move for approval with these suggested changes.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the agenda as amended. Ms. Only, would you call the roll?
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. So to repeat, sorry you had to make so many annotations on your agenda. That makes item 4A, update on the county attorney search, item 4B, evaluation process for the county administrator, and item 4C, clerk to council search. With that, we will move to item 4A, update on county search. We have with us Randy Frank from Randy Frank Consulting, who will give us an update.
It's great to see all of you today. We have 21 applications at this point. I haven't received any new emails in the past couple of days from new candidates, so that's good. I had 2 candidates said they were going to apply but did not, so that would have been 23, but we have 21. The breakdown is 8 women and 13 men. And I did my best to determine minority status, and we do not ask that question, and we cannot ask that question. So unless you want them to fill out an HR form that's for EEO, I think we may have 2 minority males, maybe 1 minority female, and I have 10 people that I have no idea what they are because when I looked them up, they didn't have a picture. So it's purely a guess. And I have spoken we have received the questionnaires from everyone but 2 of the candidates that we asked. We asked 12 candidates out of that 21 to give us a questionnaire because we felt that they were qualified. One had an emergency with their office, an audit of their office. So I will be talking to her tonight and see if I can find out when she'll be available to do her stuff. But we really like her because she's got the right kind of experience. And I have 1 candidate who has not responded to our request for an interview or to the questionnaire. So I sent him an email yesterday and said, are you still interested? And have not heard, so I will also call him if I don't hear from him. I've spoken to 6 people so far. I have the others to speak to over the next 2 days. And then on Wednesday night, Bob Slavin and I will go over the questionnaires and my interview notes and decide which candidates will continue to be shown to you for semifinalist list. And we'll probably rate them because we'd like to give you more names than not, and tell you which ones we think are less qualified because they don't have as much government experience and the types of experience that you wanted. But we'll probably provide that information to you in case you want to look at them. We did have a candidate that wanted to remain confidential, but now that he's on the semifinalist list, he said we can release his name and his resume, so we won't have a problem with that. And he was I really like him. And the, so after Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, I'll work on, and the weekend, putting the document together that has the resume and questionnaires of the top candidates that we feel are semifinalists for you, probably with a rating system of some sort. And then put that all together and send that to you. We'll do a overnight of a document, and I'll also put it into an email. We'll probably have to break it down because it's so much pages, but put it in email so that you can get to look at it faster than the document gets there to you. So we'll need to have you review that. We will remind you when we send you the report that you should not be calling any of these candidates. You should not be calling any of your friends that may know these candidates because you haven't decided if they're going to be a finalist yet. Once they become a finalist, then we start the backgrounds. Then you can start talking to people because we will also get them to fill out a form that says that we can start talking to people. And then we can plan our interview process. One of the things that you may want to do is take the list, and if you have too many that you don't want to do a face-to-face interview with because it'll take too much time, you may want to do some of them as a Zoom, or take a group, maybe 7 or 8 of them, do a fast Zoom interview with them, and then decide which ones will come in. So you'll have a smaller group of 3 to 4 or 5 candidates for face-to-face interviews. But that will depend on when you look at the list. We'll also give you a form that you can fill out that says, this is my number 1 candidate, my number 2 candidate, my number 3. We'll take that information from you and add it all up and tell you who comes up on top. And usually we have a break off somewhere. And so we'll recommend those. We always recommend about 5 or 6 at least for your finalists, because you can lose some people. A few of these people have their resumes out to other places. Some of the candidates are just looking at this job because it was so interesting to them. But you can always lose some people after a while. So we always want to have extras. One time I had 6 candidates and we ended up with 2 interviews. So you want to have a few extra on the list. And I think we can stay, not sure if we'll be able to do, we'll probably can do tentative round of interviews for the July 19th through 30th. The sooner we do those, once you've decided on your finalists, and that could be the Zoom part, and then we can bring in the top group for final interviews. So we're close to our schedule, and I will work all weekend to make sure I have this done if I don't get it done before then.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Frank. So just to repeat really quickly, and then we have questions from Ms. Mackey and Ms. McBride. You have received 21 applications total. You have provided questionnaires to 12 of those candidates, meaning those are the candidates that you think meet the qualifications.
Right.
And then after you process those questionnaires and those applications, you're going to forward to us a list of the resumes, their applications, your ranking, as well as the questionnaires.
Right.
Okay, and then I'll just ask that you coordinate with me and we'll work with our clerk's office. I think you mentioned that you were overnighting it just to make sure that the right people well, at least for the committee and everyone else, that we get that information to the right places. So Ms. Mackey, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Just so I'm clear, are we saying at this point the job posting is closed, or will you still receive applications after today?
I did receive applications after the first screening date of June 13th and did look at them, and we got a few that were good. But people read that June 13th, and if they haven't called me yet and haven't asked me a question and haven't told me they're gonna call, unless they just see it today, most likely we won't. But it's not closed. If I get a great resume, I will let you know. And we may have to do something different with that resume because there won't be enough time. But if I get any great resumes after the dates, I will let you know.
Yes, please let us know. And even if they aren't great, I would still just like to know if
Right.
any others came in. Thank you.
Ms. Mackey, may I ask a question just to make sure that we're honoring your request?
Yeah.
You said that you would like to know if additional resumes come in. Are you also asking to see resumes of people that our firm has decided are not qualified for the position, or you just want to know if more people applied?
Just want to know if more people applied or not. If they're not
Okay.
qualified, I don't have to see them. Just want to know after the fact if we just got it on flux, because sometimes, people just start seeing stuff somewhere that they missed before. So just curiosity.
Thank you. Ms. McBride?
Yes, let me preempt my statement by saying that I don't need to know whether an applicant is Black, white, a person of color, other color, but I do want to be ensured that there's diversity with the pool of applicants we have. So I'm not understanding or sure that based on Ms. Franks, what you just said, that we can do that. And that has always been one of my major concerns, that there be a diversified pool of applicants.
We absolutely did outreach that was very diversified. We sent out 900 emails to all women that are in the South Carolina Women's Lawyers Association. So we definitely got the women checked off. I also did over 4,000, my partner and I did over 4,000 emails to the South Carolina Bar. People that had over 3 years experience. Now, of course, we were looking for over 10 years, but that's the only division that they had on their listing. And so and the Careers in Government does a diversity boost and sends it out to 8 organizations that are diverse. And so we did that effort. Problem is, we're not allowed legally to ask them if they are minorities. Now, one of the candidates I do know is a Black male because he said he was in the Black Male Lawyers Association. I'm assuming he's Black, but he could be in the association and not be Black, but I'm assuming he is. And there are some times in their resumes you can tell something, but others you can't. I did, as Councilwoman Newton asked me to see if I could find out that information. I went online, looked up their name, and most of them do not put their picture, even if their name, if I did find the right person. Now, of course, there was a Thomas Smith, which is very hard to find because there's always lots of Thomas Smiths, but I did find the right person, but again, no picture. So I can't tell you if they may or may not be a minority. Some I did have pictures and could tell that they were not a minority based on their picture. And it's purely a guess, but I feel that we did a great job in getting out to everyone. We're just not allowed, you as a organization Your HR department could send each one of these people a EEO form and have them fill it out. But we're not allowed to ask that question as consultants.
Is that, Ms. Frank, that's your policy?
Yeah.
Okay, that's your policy. Yes.
We don't want to cause a problem in that area. It's just, it is, you just get too many things. Now, when I was in local government, we always had a sheet on the end of the application or the process that they could fill out, and it's always pulled off from the person who's reviewing resumes. That's the way that you can find it out. But I think we've got a great pool of people that have government experience. And we had a number of attorneys that looked like they had lots of great experience, but they just didn't have your kind of experience. They had lots of years. We had, have to say, there was 3 women who applied who are like 2 years out of their graduate degree or their JD degree and applied for the job. Absolutely not qualified, but they applied.
Again, as I stated previously, I'm not interested in the individual applicant. I am interested in the pool of applicants.
Right.
So I remain having a major concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to see I'll say applications for all candidates and have you, Ms. Frank, tell us why you feel someone is not qualified, just like you're going to provide us why they are qualified. And something as simple as lack of experience 2 years out, as you just stated, is fine.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, and one other comment I had, when you said when we get the list of names, you said not to contact anybody to see if they know them, or you may know somebody that knows them. I don't understand why we wouldn't do that, only because a council member could know someone very well that would know an individual and get some information that could either be positive or negative about that person that we wouldn't know otherwise.
I would ask you do that after you've decided which candidates, based on their resume and their questionnaire, and the questionnaire gives you a lot of good information.
Okay.
After we've gotten that information, you decide on your finalists, because these people have jobs, almost all of them have jobs. And if you start calling people before we've asked them to fill out a form that says we're going to do a background and we're going to check people, then that can cause a problem for them and their job.
Okay, understandable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Are there any other questions for Ms. Frank? If not, I know that I have one. Ms. Mackey?
Thank you, Ms. Newton. I just wanted to make sure I had the dates right. So we said we would have the packet from her this weekend, Monday. Was there a time frame on that?
I will try my best to get it to you Monday, if not Tuesday.
Got it.
Depending on whether, if I get it done Saturday and can get to UPS in time, then it might be there Monday. But if I don't, it will get there Tuesday.
Okay, and so this is a printed document. Nothing will be emailed to us. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I will
Okay.
also work with Councilwoman Newton and put an email together so that if she wants to, she can put them out. I will try to get about 5 copies done. If I have to do for the whole council, it may take longer. So you tell me what you want me to do, how many copies you want me to get to you for shipping it versus those who may want to look at it on an email or, you know, a PDF kind of thing.
Ms. Frank, maybe you and I can coordinate after this, and it could be that working with our clerk's office, the best way to do it might be for us to handle it electronically and for us to distribute it on our end. So if we can because I know that you're only going to be with us for a few more minutes. If we can handle that bit of administrivia a little bit later,
Okay.
I'll make sure that everybody gets what they need. Ms. McBride?
Miss, you had something to say, Miss?
I had a question, but I'm happy to
That's
wait
all right,
until
I'll wait,
everyone else is up.
because yours might answer mine.
We'll see. So, Miss Frank, I just want us to understand that we're working with tentative timelines, but corralling interested council members is one of the most difficult things that we sometimes do. Based on what you described, you suggested that potentially the weeks of July 19th through July 30th might be the best time for interviews, whatever process it is that we choose for that. I just wanted to confirm that that was what you were thinking.
Well, we'll need to have an executive session with the council before that to look at the semifinalists to reduce the list. So that would be the week of July
13th.
and 13th. If we could do that, that would, if you can find a meeting time after the July 4th holiday, the week of the 6th or the beginning of the 12th, 13th and 14th, then Bob and I can be on and tell you why we said what we said about those, the candidates that we're presenting to you, so that then you can vote on which ones you want to move forward. And then we can do an interview and we'll talk about what form that would be.
Okay, and we'll work at looking at those timeframes. The process that we've used previously is that has come through the committee. So the committee would need to meet to make a recommendation, and then it would go that way. So we can back that time frame up. Thank you. Ms. McBride?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Newton, as you know, that one of the conditions that I stated in the beginning, that we would have a diversified pool of applicants. At this point, I don't know whether we would have that or not. And I am very concerned and disappointed that there's no way that we can tell. Again, I reemphasize, I said a diversified pool, and I'm not speaking of an individual. So I am very concerned, and I'm not sure about my participation with this process, given that this was stated up front.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Now, let me ask a question. It appears that our Human Resources Division might be on this call. Mr. Hanna, are you here?
Yes, I am here. I'm sorry, I was muted.
No problem. Muting gets us all sooner or later. Ms. Frank, having heard Ms. McBride's concerns and understanding what your policy is, one of the things that you mentioned as a possible option might be if Richland County had our human resources group reach out to candidates. So I'm not sure if Mr. Hanna was here for that part of the conversation. Is that a potential avenue? Do you stand by that as a potential avenue that we can explore with this search process?
If Human Resources wants to send out the usual EEO form, that's what I call it. I can give Mr. Hanna the emails to all of the candidates.
Okay, Ms. McBride, I realize that your hand is still raised. I'm sorry, were you done? I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Hanna, I don't know if you heard the entire conversation, but is that something that you would have any qualms about from an HR perspective, collaborating with our recruiter to potentially send out an EEO form? And if we need,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
Oh, I was just going to say, and if we need to involve legal in this conversation, then that's something that we can also take up potentially offline if needed.
Generally speaking, Ms. Newton, obviously, I'm certainly always glad to assist the council and anyone that the council is working with, the consultant. As I understand, we would be, in this case specifically, are being asked to send out an EEO form to applicants. We normally do not do that, only to the candidate that's selected. So I would want to confer with legal, and I'll do that to make sure that that would be okay for us to do that with applicants. I have a little concern about doing that with applicants.
Thank you, Mr. Hannah. And I appreciate you offering to reach out to legal. I know that there are a lot of complicated policies as it relates to this, and we don't want to run afoul of any of them. Ms. McBride,
Yes,
and then Mr. Malinowski.
I remain concerned that we're having to involve our HR department in doing this. And I think it would have been good had we known up front that that was the policy of this company, because previously we have not had this issue, and particularly given that we stated the need up front regarding diversity in our applicants, in the pool of applicants. And so I do have concerns about having our HR do that. It looks different, it feels different in them doing it, but I would wait to see what Mr. Hannah has to say in legal.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. And at this point, just exploring options. I know with the other search firm that we've used, they also don't request that information as part of their policy when they are taking applicants.
But they
either.
have done it because we've gotten it on all the other search firms.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. If you could hold tight 1 second, Ms. Frank, I know you have to leave soon, and Mr. Malinowski has a question.
Just to follow up on Ms. McBride's, I was just going to ask, why can't Ms. Frank's firm send out these forms?
Well, first of all, the people that have not been asked to do a questionnaire are probably not going to fill it out because they know they're not in the process. I guess we could have thought about doing it beforehand, but it's not proper. And as you heard, HR, they don't send it to their applicants because of the concerns. Now I have 10 people here, 5 women and 5 men, that I have no idea what their race is, or, I do know that they're women because of their name. I had one person whose name I wasn't sure, but I figured out by the resume that said she, so I knew that it was a woman. But that it's just not done, because then people will say, you took me off the list because I was a minority or I was a woman. If we don't ask, then they can't say that we were looking at any of that information. We were looking at their skills, abilities, and experience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Miss English.
That kind of answered my question, but I guess I'm wondering, because I am a state employee and they do ask that question, and it is removed. It's not a tracking device whether or not a person is qualified or not, but what it is a tracking device to see how these employment databases are reaching all of the minority or all of the individuals. So that's why I'm wondering why it would be taken off, because you don't have to, there can be a piece that could be detached and you wouldn't know, but you would have a database.
Remember,
of how many.
The only person that's looking at this is Bob and I, till you get it. And so people may feel uncomfortable filling that out for us. Now, in a state, when I worked as an HR director in a state or in a local government organization, we had that. It came off immediately and it was in a separate pile, and no one who was looking at the resumes was looking at those things because it doesn't have a name on it. It just has the information. Can't do that with a small firm with 2 people. I don't have anyone to take that form if I were to have done it. And remember, we only asked them to give us a resume and a cover letter. We didn't ask them to fill out an application, which in the state government, you're always filling out an application.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. English. Ms. McBride?
That's okay. I'm going to hold any comments until I hear from Mr. Hannah. Otherwise, Ms. English addressed the points that I was about to make. So thank you, Ms. English.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Ms. Frank, I know that you have another meeting that you have to hop off for. Do you have any other comments that you would like to share with us regarding the search?
No, just that we're very pleased with the number, and I know everybody thinks big numbers, but it's quality we're looking for, and we have some very good quality. So I'm very excited.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. So based on the information from Ms. Frank, and there's still some information that we will need to gather, it appears that there are some decisions that we need to make with regards to process. And Ms. Frank, if you need to sign off, you can. I know you mentioned you have another meeting. There's some decisions that we would need to make with regards to process. So specifically, the way that we've handled other searches via this committee has been that the recruiting firm has sent the candidate information to this committee, and that we have used that information to select finalists, whether or not we have decide whether or not we want to have an introductory interview, et cetera. And so my recommendation would be that we follow that same process that we've used for the administrator and the clerk to council, but that is a decision that the committee has to make. And so I would love to hear feedback from my colleagues, whether or not you serve on this committee. Mr. Malinowski, I can't tell if you were leaning forward to unmute yourself or just leaning forward with interest.
No, I'm leaning forward to hear you better because the phone message thing just came on.
Oh, sorry. So again, and this is something that we can also discuss via email, but I'll try to speak a little bit louder, Mr. Malinowski. The previous process that we used were that the committee collected the resumes, and then we sent all the information to council, but we ourselves made a recommendation on who we thought those final candidates should be to go to council. And so wanted to just get thoughts on if we wanted to continue to use that process. And it looks like Ms. Mackey has a comment.
Yes, I just want to say I'm fine with continuing to use that process.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mackey. Ms. McBride?
Madam Chair, I really had another meeting, but I wanted to at least be part of this, so I'm going to have to leave.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Did you want to chime in real quickly on following the process before you do?
Not really. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then with that in mind, hearing at least the people that have expressed input in terms of following that same process, I will need to reach out to the committee again, and we would need to schedule a committee meeting that would be in advance of the July 13th full council meeting to share that information. So I'll coordinate with the clerk to council's office and with you, as well as with Ms. Frank, to look at scheduling to figure out what some of those times might be. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you. While you say reach out before the 13th meeting, Ms. Frank specifically stated that we could, if we could do it the week of the 6th or the week of the 12th. It wouldn't have to be before that council meeting. And I think we really need to wait, as Ms. McBride commented, to see where human resources is going to ultimately end up after discussions from legal to see if there's something else that needs to be done in there. So I don't want to wind up doing like sometimes has been done. We hurry up and schedule a meeting, then we don't have the info. We meet, but then we have to only meet again to make sure we get the rest of the info. I just think we need to make sure that Ms. Frank gets us the info and that we have all that we need before we meet. I just don't know that it's as important that we have to push it to make sure it's there for the July 13th council meeting. We've got one that follows right after that on the 20th. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Understood. And I wasn't suggesting that we try to have a meeting before we have all the information, but just acknowledging, if we're going to have a meeting at the if we're going to bring this to council on the 13th, whenever we bring it to council, we'll need to have a committee meeting in advance. So either way, we will keep the committee informed as we move forward with this. Is there any other discussion, or are there any other questions related to the county attorney search?
No,
Ms.
I
English?
guess since it's, I just wanted to address, because I understand Ms. McBride's kind of plea for this. When we're looking for a diverse, I'm thinking Indian, white, Black, Asian, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, and we can't determine any of that. And so that data is missing, period. And that's huge. That's a huge piece of data that's missing. Not what color they are, but that data portion of that that employment pool is missing. So I understand what she's saying. And how do we move forward when we don't know anything? Not that they qualified or they don't qualify, but that's a huge piece of information that's missing. And I guess I just needed to make that point, because none of that has been tracked.
Thank you, Ms. English.
Thank you.
And so in addition to whatever we hear back from our attorney, from HR, et cetera, I'll have additional conversations with Ms. Frank to look at what the options are. I know that in terms of the recruiting world, just for fear of lawsuits and legal reasons, that this is not the only firm that has that policy. In fact, all the other firms I've worked with have had that policy, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to find a way to make sure that we have a diversified candidate pool. And that was one of the things that was stressed with this firm, which is part of the reason why they did some of the outreach that they did. And we signed up for some additional distribution services to try really hard to make sure that we were reaching as many populations as we could with the advertisement. So your concern is noted, and we'll look at opportunities that we have to address that.
Well, she kept saying, I don't know. So that didn't help. So thank you.
Yes. We have had that conversation before, Ms. English. So thank you for that point. That brings us to item 4B, the evaluation process for the county administrator. And specifically on that front, we talked about a few things in terms of an evaluation process. So just a quick recap, the process that we used for our county administrator last year was that we worked with a third-party firm to work with us to develop evaluation criteria. Once that was created, there was a self-assessment process that Mr. Brown completed. Then there was an evaluation process that council members completed. Then those materials were compiled. They were shared with full council, and the chair and vice chair shared that information with Mr. Brown. When I went back and reviewed Mr. Brown's agreement, it actually specifies that his evaluation process will be facilitated by a third-party firm. So that process is already there. In terms of how we might want to move forward, I reached out to procurement to get some information on that process. And I see that procurement is here, so I will speak to it very briefly and let them answer any questions that you have. Essentially, we have two firms, human resources firms, that are currently already on contract with Richland County Council. And Richland County, in the event that we wanted to use one of those firms, we could work with them. Otherwise, we would have the option to go out to bid. Well, let me say that differently. Depending on the cost of the work, we could either solicit 3 proposals or issue a solicitation for the work. But either way, if we don't want to work with a firm that already has an established agreement with council or the county, we would want to develop a scope of work for how we want that evaluation process to go. Do we want to use the same process that we used last year? Do we want to use a process that has been talked about before, of including a 360 evaluation process in that? Once we have a basic outline of a scope of work, which is something I hope we could talk about as a committee, then our procurement team would be in a position to get quotes for us and advise us on how to move forward. With that, I will pause. Ms. Logiskin, is there anything additional that you want to say that I didn't say before we open up for council questions and comments? But you're on mute, so it's lovely to see you.
I clicked too soon. Sorry about that, Jennifer Ladishkin, procurement manager. No, I think you summarized the information that I provided. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you. So again, we would need to outline a broad scope of work. So last year's scope of work included criteria, self-assessment, facilitating a council member assessment that was conducted electronically and on paper for those who desired it. I would again like to add the possibility of a 360-degree feedback mechanism, because I think you get great feedback that way. But that's what we would need to determine for more information. Mr. Malinowski.
Hey, Madam Chair, this would be for Ms. Wadishkin, and that is, if we already have two firms, it was stated that they have agreements or already work with Richland County. Is there any reason that we just can't use one of them, or is there something else we need to do?
No, there's no reason you can't use one of those firms. I would just mention that they were selected based on other projects, not this specific project. So for instance, one of them was selected based on being a consultant related to our health benefits. So that may not be the best firm, may or may not be the best firm to look at an employee evaluation program. So these would have been consultants that were selected based on other projects that were going on in the county. But they are both human resource consultants. And, you know, I'd be happy to get some more information from them to help you make a decision about approaching one of them or soliciting if you'd like.
And that's what I was going to ask, Madam Chair, if maybe we can request procurement to make the inquiry of both of these firms, let them know what it is that we're trying to achieve, and see if in fact they come back with, yes, we can do it, or we don't want to get near it.
Absolutely. And to that point, Mr. Malinowski, that's why I was hoping, even with those firms, if we just had a rudimentary bullet points for what we want it to happen as a basic scope of work, then when procurement reaches out, they could say, we do this part, but not this part. We do all these parts. We do none of those parts. So I was still hoping for some additional input from us.
Right. Well, and I was going to ask or recommend that we do that 360 process as was described at the last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Mr. Livingston, and then Ms. Mackey.
Ms. Student, do you remember how we went about doing that scope of work the last time?
Yes, we used Mr. Brown's job description, and we worked with the consultant to take that job description. And then as a committee, we looked at what the most important elements were. Some of them were very small. And so we didn't want to have a qualification matrix that had 75 different criteria. We wanted to group them into large items, but they were based on the job description.
Yeah, I do remember that now, very clearly.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, as we have some council members who are here now who weren't part of that process, I can distribute those evaluations to everyone so that they can see that for their reference. Go ahead, Mr. Livingston.
And I know a conversation Ms. McBride and I had with Mr. Brown a little while ago. We talked about him moving forward on working on a self-evaluation. So he may have done something with that at this particular point. And that would solely be based on the criteria too, though, because we didn't go through doing any type of not evaluation, but scope of work, anything of that particular nature. But it was based on just on his job description more than anything else, I think.
Okay. Thank you,
But
Mr. Livingston.
just see where he is with that and how that may or may not fit in with things.
Okay.
That self-evaluation he's working on.
Thank you. Miss Mackey? Wait, pardon me, Mr. Livingston, were you done?
Yes, and I also agree with let's try to do a 360 process this time too.
Thank you. Miss Mackey?
Yes, just wanted to agree with my other colleagues. I'm in favor of the 360.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, your squares are moving as you're asking questions. Miss English, I see you tapping the screen. I'm not sure if you want to say something or you're just tapping. All right, you have your hand
No, I
raised.
just wanted to voice my agreement with that.
Thank you. So it sounds like we have agreement on the 360-degree feedback element. I'll just repeat again, last time there was a self-evaluation component and then a council evaluation component, which I think worked really well. Is there anything else that we would want to add to that scope of work while to aid procurement and getting additional information for us? Okay. Hearing none, I will, Ms. Logiskin, I will just touch base with you after this to make sure that you have all the information that you need so that you can come back to us with information from the two firms with which we already have agreements. And I'm looking, Mr. Livingston, is that an old hand or a new hand?
That's just an old hand.
All right. I will take that hand as agreement for what we are discussing. Is there anything else that we want to add to the conversation about the evaluation process for the county administrator? Okay. That brings us to.
I'm sorry, I do have
yes,
one.
Miss English.
Pay increase.
That the way that it was done last time, and I'm going to allow Mr. Livingston to address that if I'm incorrect, that was something that I think was reviewed as part of the conversation. So first the evaluation happened and then council discussed what, if any, additional steps they wanted to take. But Mr. Livingston, is there anything you would like to add on that front?
Yes, that's number determined after the evaluation process is completed. Then you have the discussion about what will be the follow-up, in terms of whether or not there's an increase, whether or not there's continued employment, whatever it might be.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. Any other questions on the evaluation process for the county administrator? Ms. Mackey?
What is the proposed timeline for this? So are we saying that eventually we want to conduct this evaluation in the first quarter of next year based off 2021? What is the time frame of said evaluation?
So the evaluation process to keep it annual would need to be conducted this year. And so I was hoping that once we got information back from the firms that we could set up a firmer timeline, but we can also set targets for that right now in terms of when we would want to complete it. When we did it last time, the phases were confirming what the criteria were that we were going to use. We finalized what the instruments were that we were going to use. There was a period that allowed Mr. Brown to have his self-evaluation, which was then sent to council, and then council did the evaluation and the results of that were tabulated. So we could certainly, we can work backwards if there's a particular target date that we would like to work for. My goal would certainly be, considering that we are in June, almost the end of June, I would hope that that's something that we could get done by September. But we can set a date and work back, or wait to hear back from our firms to see what their timelines are as well.
When was the date of the last review? Was that September of last year, or?
I want to say that the last one was in July, but I will
Okay.
have to double check my notes on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items or comments? Okay, hearing none, that brings us to item 4C, the clerk to council search. So I forwarded council members an email, and I can't remember now, I guess it was last week, from Find Great People in terms of what the process would be to work with them for that search. And so essentially, I had another conversation with Miss Mack this week, and there were just a few questions, a few places where they would need input from us in terms of moving forward. Specifically, those questions are there any changes that we would want to make to the job description that we just approved not too long ago? And then secondarily, are there any changes that we would want to make in terms of the process that we use for candidates? And then finally, as part of that, with previous searches, we have done searches where we are trying to get a critical mass to have a broad pool of finalists before we move on to interviews. And so the question was, do we want to use that process again? Or would we want to do something where qualified applicants were referred to council immediately as opposed to waiting? Any process is fine. There was a concern based on our previous search and based on their experiences with searches that they're conducting now, that they weren't necessarily expecting that we would receive a large number of applicants. But again, we can do the process either way. So those questions are, is the job description the same that we would like to use? Are there any modifications that we would like to make to the process? And unfortunately, Miss Mack had another appointment that was scheduled at this time, so she couldn't join us, but would absolutely be willing to join us at another time. But if there's any discussions that we want to have now about that process, we could potentially give them guidance. Mr. Livingston.
It might be helpful if we could get to all the new members a copy of the previous process that we went through, so they have something to look at and determine whether or not that's a good process or whether or not there's some suggestions about changing it. It might be helpful.
Sure, and I can do that. I'll just remind you, Mr. Livingston, that our new members were part of that process as well. So they joined in the middle.
Right, yeah.
But then were participants in that process, including, I want to say, the interview process, but I can get a list.
That was just, yeah, this one on set, yes.
Okay. Mr. Livingston, are you done?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Malinowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As to the process, when I had asked Ms. Mack during the last recruiting session we did, where the applicants came from, seemed to me that the majority, if not all of the applicants, came from applications they previously had on file. They went out and sought individuals out that maybe were referred to them by someone else. I'm not so sure that it was really an open notice so that anyone and everyone could see we were hiring for a particular position. I'm not even so sure that notice was given to anywhere in Richland County. And I would like to make sure that it's fair across the board for anyone. We don't have to just restrict ourselves to some memory bank that a search firm has. And I'd like to see it expanded. That'd be my concern on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. I do believe that the position was advertised, but we can certainly say to them as part of this process that in addition to the connections that they already have, that we want to make sure that it's advertised as broadly as possible and ensure that at a minimum, there's collaboration with Richland County HR and websites so that we're advertising there and maybe some additional places that we didn't advertise last time. Are there other thoughts or comments? I don't see any hands raised, so I would have a question for the group. I can absolutely send out the process. Any feedback on the job description? We did it really not very long ago. Does the committee feel comfortable recommending to go ahead and move forward with that job description? Or is that something that members want to take more time to look at before we give the okay? Ms. Mackey.
I'm fine with the job description.
Thank you. Miss English, were you going to raise your hand?
Yeah, I just want to review it again.
Okay, absolutely. That is in your inbox. So I had Miss Mack send it and I forwarded that to you, so you will have that information.
Thank you.
Apart from the job description, and we can think about the process as well, Mr. Malinowski has suggested that we make sure that our search or advertisements as part of our search are as broad as possible, that we're really reaching out everywhere that we can. Any additional thoughts that anybody wants to share right now in terms of the process? Okay. Hearing none, I have some action items that I will take there. Any additional comments on anything on our agenda before we entertain a motion to adjourn? It looks like hearts and minds are clear. It's 2:58 p.m. I feel pleased with the progress we were able to make during our meeting today, and I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to
Or
adjourn.
we can stay. Okay.
Second,
Motion to adjourn.
second,
You sure? Okay, it's been moved and
Second.
properly seconded to and seconded again, even more firmly, to adjourn. Miss Only, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride, Mackey,
yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
See you this afternoon.
See you later.
I am.
Bye.